What child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping? Whom angels greet with anthems sweet, while shepherds watch are keeping. This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste to bring him on, the babe, the Son of Mary. What lays in such mean estate, where ox and ass are feeding? Good Christian, fear, for sinners hear the silent word is pleading. So bring him incense, gold, and myrrh, from peasant king to own him. The King of kings salvation brings. Let loving hearts enthrone him. This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste to bring him on, the babe, the Son of Mary.
Good morning, church family, and also to all my boys and girls that are listening via our live stream. It's my privilege to be here again to tell a story. One of our storytellers had surgery, so I'm filling in, and I'm gladly do it because I have a whole collection of stories, especially at Christmas. And as I told you last week, I love them. This is my other anthology person. He is Dr. Joel Wheeler. He's a teacher, or was a teacher, and he has collected over 28 books of, and I have all of them, of stories for Christmas. So this is another one that he put together. This story is called The Christmas Room, and it's by an author. I'm not familiar with this author. It's Gillette Jones. Anyway, this is a story of a grandmother who is going to go see her grandchildren, and she arrives at the door, and I'm looking forward to doing this this next week, by the way, and she's just overwhelmed with her 3 little grandchildren, and they're trying to get her luggage, and they're trying to hug her, and they're trying to kiss her, and they take her to the guest room. And on the door of the guest room, written in red and green crayons, is a title, and it's called The Christmas Room. And this brings the grandmother back to fond memories when their mother, whose name is Barbara, was 9 years old, and they lived in the Depression years. And not all of you know when the Depression years. I only know it by history because it was before I was born even. But they lived then, and it's much like the COVID that many men did not have work, and it was a hard times. But Barbara, when she went to school, she was very shy and retiring, and there was one girl that was very boisterous and outgoing, and she was a very rich little girl. Unusual for that time, but they had them. And she spied Barbara and immediately wanted to be friends for her. I think partly because she could order her around, because Barbara was shy. So they had a very strange relationship. Sometimes Joan was very good to Barbara and would give her candy and take her to her house to play with all her multitude of toys, and sometimes she wasn't very kind at all. And Barbara's parents, the grandma, wished that Barbara could have another friend other than Joan, because of kind of the caustic relationship. But she never did. She stayed with Joan. So Barbara and her mother, long about November, decided that they should do some creative thinking of how to give gifts because they didn't have money for them. So they would go to their little room that had only a hard day bed in it. It was kind of lumpy, and it had a wobbly little desk in there, but that's where they did all their dreaming and creativity of Christmas gifts. For the little grandmothers, they got Epsom salt, and they colored it with coloring, cake coloring, and made them and put them in pretty little jars that they had saved, and that was for both grandmas. For both grandpas, they covered a little bitty box with some scrap material that they had to make them look very pretty, and those were for the stick pins that their grandfathers put in their ties, and they each had more than 2 or 3, so they thought the box would be a good thing. For others, they made little pot holders that looked like tea kettles, and they made pin cushions that looked like little hats, and these were all the gifts that they had. And then they began to wrap them. Very creative. They took just regular paper that they got at the market that wrapped up their things that they would get, and then they took their Christmas cards that they saved, and they cut the little figures and little pictures out of it, and they put them on the packages, and they looked quite clever, and they were very pretty. So back to Barbara and Joan. One December day, Barbara, I'm going to get the girls' names mixed up. Barbara came home from school, and she looked very sad, and her mother said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Oh, nothing, Mother." And she said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Well, I told a fib." Now, some of you boys and girls might not know the term fib. I know fib because I grew up in an age when it was used, and my mother was very against fib telling. It means lie. And so she was feeling very sorry, and her mother was glad she told her, and they asked for prayer and for the forgiveness of it. But after that, and they felt cheerful and happy again, she said, "The reason that came up, Mother, is because Joan showed me the guest room, and it was very beautiful. And I'm kind of ashamed of our house, and I told her we don't have guests, but we have a Christmas room," and that was my fib. And her mother said, "Well, that's not exactly an untold fib, although I'm glad we confessed it, but we do have a Christmas room. It's where we've done all our creative things." And she said, "But she wants to see our Christmas room." And she said, "And so she shall." So they made a sign out of, you guessed it, red crayon and green crayon, and they wrote "The Christmas Room." And so Joan was invited to come and see it, and the mother was praying that that little girl would not make bad remarks about what that room looked like, because it wasn't very pretty at all. It had cracks in the wall, and it wasn't very pretty pretty at all. But the little girl was more attracted to what they had on that wobbly desk. They had created a manger scene by cutting figures out of books and magazines that they had, and it was very clever. And the little girl said, "Ours is made out of china, and it's very beautiful. But this is interesting." And so then she looked at the bed full of gifts and she said, "What are those?" And they said, "Oh, those are surprises. We can't share them." And she says, "I never get a surprise." And Barbara asked Joan, "Why? Do you look at your gifts ahead of time?" And she said, "Nope." She said, "But they always get me what I want." And they said, "Well, we'll give you a gift. If you want, you can come to our house for the next 1 day a week for the next 2 weeks before Christmas and make some things with us and wrap them." And so they did. They made cookies one day and they put those in a pretty little box for her mother, and they made the stick pin box for the father. And so when those 2 weeks were over, and the last day she was there, they gave her a little gift, and she said, "Here." And she opened it, and they couldn't tell by her face. It looked confused because it was popcorn, unpopped popcorn. And they said, "We're going to pop this corn and dye it colors and string it on strings, or thread it through on string, and we're going to put it on our Christmas tree. Would you like to do it?" And she smiled and she said, "Yes, but they will never let me put this on our tree. I'm not allowed to touch it. Only the servants do it. They're afraid I will break something." And they said, "Well, you can come back and help us trim our tree." And so she was very happy about that. And she was turning to go, and the mother prayed in her heart, "Oh, Joan, please take those packages." And you know what? She did. She picked them up and took it back to her own parents. Now, the story never tells us what she did or how her parents liked them or if they made fun. They prayed that they wouldn't make fun of it. But the very last thing about it, and I want to read this part because it's very sweet. There was no, and this is going back to the forward now, and the grandmother is saying, there was no need for Barbara to do as I did because she had money and she didn't have to have the Christmas room door and decoration. But she had been very young that year of the Christmas very young that year of the Christmas room, yet even then she must have known that the Christmas room is a room for people, for thoughts of others, and a room of the heart. Thank you.
Amen.
I'd like to take this opportunity right now to thank Bob and Sharon, Eileen, and our young people for being willing to share their musical talents with us this morning for our Christmas worship service. And we want our Christmas worship service to be inclusive, which means we want all of you to sing a couple songs also. So at this time, we are going to sing the first Noel, which is hymn number 118. You all may stay seated. The words will be up on the wall there. So the first Noel.
What you served and worshipped in fields
There's a Song in the Air, hymn number 120.
There's a song in the air, there's a star in the sky, there's a mother's deep cry, and the babies will cry, and the song rings its for mother. the night wind to the little lamb, do you see what I see? Way up in the sky, little lamb, do you see what I see? A star, dancing in the night with a tail as big as a kite, with a tail as big as a kite. Said the little lamb to the shepherd boy,
Do you hear what I hear?
do you hear what I hear?
Do you hear what I hear?
Ringing through the sky, shepherd boy.
Do you hear what I hear?
Do you hear what I hear?
Do you hear what I hear?
A song, high above the trees with a voice as big as the sea, with a voice as big as the sea.
Said the shepherd boy to the mighty king, do you know what I know? In your palace warm, mighty king, do you know what I know? A child shivers in the cold. Let us bring him silver and gold. Let us bring him silver and gold.
Said the king to the people everywhere.
Listen to what I say.
Listen to what I say.
Listen to what I say. Pray for peace, people everywhere.
Listen to what I say.
Listen to what I say. The child, sleeping in the night. He will bring us goodness and light. He will bring us goodness and
Do you want to see? Okay, you can.
Jesus, glory,
many moonless nights, cold and weary, with a pain inside, and I wonder what I've done. Holy Father, you have come and chosen me now to carry your son. I am waiting in a silent prayer. I am frightened by the load I bear, in a world as cold as stone. Must I walk this path alone? Be with me now. Be with me now. Wrath of heaven, hold me together. Be forever near me. Breath of heaven. Breath of heaven, lighten my darkness. Pour over me your holiness, for you are holy. Breath of heaven. Do you wonder as you watch my face, if a while